Welcome to episode 3 of Downloading Soon, the new Let's Talk game show where we talk about games that you're going to be downloading soon, or maybe in the distant future, disc-based or a download. You'll still get a patch. On this week's agenda, gents, we've got Cyberpunk, a hotly anticipated game for 2020. But as a how's your father? How are you doing? Are we all okay? Dan, how's your life? You blending in with your chair over there?
My football team lost tonight, so that's annoying. But excited to talk about Cyberpunk. I don't think we've actually given it enough time on our podcast.
Chunt, how are you doing, mate?
Fabulous. One day at a time.
Gravy, as you would say.
How about you? Yes, gravy.
I'm
How about
fine.
you?
This is an early morning show for me, so I'm good. I'm pepped. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk about some cyborgs with like armored titties and scythes for fingers and stuff. Yeah, enhancements, as they say. Cool. So yeah, Cyberpunk. We've done 2 of these already. By the time this one's gone out, you can watch our one for Fable and for Spider-Man Miles Morales. This is 3 of an intended 4. We might carry on, we might not, don't know. So let's talk about Cyberpunk, boys. So the format for the show being what we know to be happening with the game, what we want to happen, and what we actually think will happen. Sometimes they can be different things. So what do we know about Cyberpunk? We know that it's been made by CD Projekt Red. It's been in development for a hell of a long time. Dan, you can fact check me on that if you want. But I'm pretty sure this game went into development just as The Witcher 3 was about to launch. So it's had a long time in the oven. We've seen a good chunk of gameplay. 2018, I think they did their first kind of 40-50 minute showcase of it. They did another one last year that was slightly shorter, and we've obviously had these Wirecast things that they've been doing this year, which we've had the first one so far. So lots of stuff to digest with CD Projekt. Have you found that date, Dan?
Yeah, the first official teaser of this game was released January 10th, 2013.
Yeah, so that indicates how long that it's been bubbling for. But people trust CD Projekt, and with good reason. The Witcher 3 universally, critically adored by pretty much everyone except Chunt. And Dan, for that matter. You didn't care for it too much either. But that's why this conversation should be quite interesting.
Respected.
Respected it. Just wasn't for you. Which I think might actually be the case with this game, but we'll get into that in a short while. So those are things that we know about the game. Gents, do you know anything that I've not outlined there? Anything you think's interesting that we've already heard or seen or know about the title?
Choose your genitals. You get to choose your genitals.
Yeah, let's get down to the more important things
whatever
here.
You want.
Yeah, you can morph your own penis. You can choose how big it is. You can, or if you're playing as a female or a hermaphrodite, you can do anything in this game. You can have a bit of both.
I can finally have that average sized penis I've always wanted.
Walking around as Long Don Silver.
Oh, yeah, it's a hard life, mate. Yeah, look, I just want to know how big the game is. Like, it's obviously it's going to be like a big one, that's for sure. Like, and vertical, not just like massive maps. You've got these big mega towers and stuff that you can go through. I'm really curious to see if it's going to be anything like Dread, that movie. You know, where you got that mega city and like you got the tower kind of climb, like a mission like that. I'm really keen on that kind of stuff. And like the out of the city outskirts interests me, because we talked about it a while back where I was like, oh, this reminds me of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Like, that game was dope. I loved the shit out of that. Finished the whole map. So if it's anything like that, I know I'm going to be more excited than this than I am or was with The Witcher. Because sci-fi is more my thing. The whole time period of that fantasy realm doesn't really do it for me too much outside of like Skyrim. I don't know why, but that game just captured me like everybody else. But yeah, give me Dread experiences and I'll just be all over it. No matter how big it is. If it's not too egregious. I've been saying that word a lot lately with the menus and the RPG system, which I know it's probably going to be, but I am hoping there's an accessible mode. You know,
I think you'll be able to choose like to what level you want to invest in it. But you touched on a point there that's also, you know, the things we already know, the Badlands they're calling them, the outskirts of the city. So we know that there's 6 regions in the game, which indicates, you know, huge map, as you just alluded to there, Chunt, not only in scale but also the verticality. We know that each area is going to have its own distinct kind of feel. So each of those districts will feel very different, you know, as they would in any given place. You know, if you were to go to London and, you know, go down past Parliament and the Tower of London, it's all very prim and proper, and then you can roll down in Camden and, you know, shoot some heroin and go to some crazy clubs. Like there's a difference in places where you're visiting within a city. So I'm keen to see how Night City explores that. And the Badlands, yeah, give me very, very Mad Max kind of vibes like you just alluded to. Dan, have you got any things that you kind of, we already know about the game, that you find interesting?
Yeah, well, I guess we should point out that the game comes out on November 19th, that it's backwards compatible, and it's going to come to everything. The fact that when you begin the game, that there are 3 different backgrounds you can choose from, like you're talking about. There's the Badlands. You can start from someone that lives outside of the Night City, or you can be someone that comes up from the streets of Night City, or you can start from a position of privilege, I guess. Like you are part of some corporate structure that you have control of and go through that way, which I think it's going to be very interesting storytelling wise to come from those extremes. Like, I feel like the Badlands and the streets of Night City, you can kind of get in the same way, because you are Night City is going to have the extremes all the time. This game is going to be extreme, and it's going to keep telling you how extreme it is all the time. But I don't know how you approach the story from that corporate level where you do have everything and you are such a high priority, unless they do the video game thing where they knock you down to sorts. But yeah, that's probably the main thing I'm interested in, is the fact that you're starting from these 3 different positions.
Do you remember that gameplay demo where you were playing I think a street level dude, and you had to meet up with some chick in some like abandoned riverway or whatever you call them, and there was like some ambush with that corporate chick and stuff. Like, I'm thinking what you were just talking about. I was like, oh yeah, how are they going to marry all this together with the different origin points? And obviously there's going to be some narrative elements where they intertwine and stuff, but that just reminded me of that clip where, like, maybe this thing where you're playing this level dude and coming across these corporate team, and that they want something that you have, and it all goes to crap depending on what you choose to do. And how does this mission play out from their perspective? Like, if I was playing that origin with these guys here, do I come across the equivalent of this first person dude? That kind of stuff blows my mind, of like, well, if that's how this game's going to be, like, this is bigger than I originally thought it was going to be.
Well, I guess if there's some type of MacGuffin that you get, like, you can start off on those origins, and then at some point you all get that MacGuffin, and then you get thrown into this storyline, maybe. Like, no matter what way you choose, you have the thing.
I think they confirmed that, you know, there is a point whereby you, irrespective of what you choose, you can converge on the same outcome.
Yeah.
So it's like, no matter which way you choose, you will eventually weave yourself to a certain points of the story which are universal across any of the 3 paths that you choose to start with.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, we'll see how we go. I do hope they just execute it well. Hopefully it's not, half-assed, I'll say. Like, I doubt it's going to be, based on the pedigree of this studio, but,
No, it's CD Projekt. It's not going to be a half-ass anything, I don't think. They're meticulous, which I think is why we've seen the game delayed. Something else that this game should have been out by now. That's another thing that we all hyper aware of. I think it's had 2 release dates it's missed. So yeah, moving to November. What do we think on the move to November? Do you think that was a smart choice? Given where it now sits. Dan, you take a first stab.
I think it was to try and let anyone that was trying to play this game not feel left out. Like, I reckon they knew the fact that so many people knew how big this game was and the fact that the new consoles are coming, and they're like, well, if we just release it at a time when no matter what console you want it on, you can just play it at the time. Because that's what I was going to do. I was just going to wait, even though it's backwards compatible, I was just going to wait till I could play it on the PlayStation 5 and play it then. And maybe they saw a bit of that happening, and so they went, well, it's still in the same fiscal quarter, but so we can move it up. And I feel like there's some type of deal with Xbox at that time as well. So I feel like it's all working together. But what's a couple more months when the game was announced in 2013? Like it's almost exactly 8 years.
Right. And Chunt, do you think they're gonna launch day and date with the Series X?
100%. It's set up for it. Like, it's just being lobbied up, and all they have to do is slam it down, basically. Like, I just think they saw an opportunity where they were so close to the release of the new consoles, and that whole conversation cycling around of like, well, why not? They're not beholden to like major kind of publisher investors and that kind of stuff. Like, they're under their own steam, and they have the luxury of extending when need be. They obviously have faith in this game, to extend it out this far. So I think they're going to get the returns, and they have a big plan for this, like post-game, like multiplayer coming, and they'll see how all that pans out and what potential DLC story missions and stuff. So I think this is going to be a massive big deal for the studio. The whole console special edition Xbox One X, definitely some kind of Xbox deal there. And we all know, we just alluded to that it was supposed to come out already. So I would have said that that console would have been the launch of that game, like a lot of these other special edition consoles are. But yeah, like Dan said, why not? You got the luxury. You're not answering to anybody except your own team. I'm sure
the government.
All that stuff. Yeah. Like, they're in a very favorable position to make the game they want it to be, and not just push out a broken one like a lot of these studios have to. So, and I'm all for that same conversation of, what, just release it when it's ready if you can. Why not? Everybody's going to benefit from it. It'll be a better experience, and positives all around, I think.
I know we got to push under what we want, but and I don't want to get this onto like an Xbox conversation, but do you find it really strange that they have this special edition Xbox One X that they've announced, but they've also started to discontinue the Xbox One X as of now?
Yeah, those things are sold out. Like, you can't buy one. Like, they're just gone. So I think they were very limited run. But I think to Chunt's point there, I think the idea was that console would have launched with the game. And obviously the delays meant that they had to push the console out, because otherwise it would have become irrelevant and they wouldn't have sold it. So it makes sense to have done that. Should it have maybe been a Series X deal where they had a Series X branded console? I mean, it'd have looked sick. But I think these plans, obviously, if you watch the behind the scenes of that console, like, built, you see that they've been working on it for a long time. They spent a good year or two kind of designing what that was going to look like, and back and forth with CD Projekt, and kind of making it feel aesthetically cyberpunk and like it could be part of the world. So I think that's where that kind of piece goes. But you are correct. We should move into what we want from Cyberpunk. And Chunt, you've told us what you didn't want, just kind of alluding to the Witcher kind of stuff. So what do you want from Cyberpunk?
Oh, I want to be enamored. I want to be captured. I want this game to be one of those big games that finally gets me in the mood to play something that I can, keep coming back to after work, when I'm done. Like, I want one of those experiences where, I can't wait to finish work and, hop right back in you know, almost like this Matrix kind of mentality of like, oh, I just want to go back to that world. You know, it's something surreal and different, and you know, particularly where how most of us working from home or stuck indoors, you've just got these four walls basically, and just to have this unreal cityscape to lose yourself in, and something you'd never experience in real life. That's what I'm looking for. Like, I'm probably hyping myself up for this game too much. Like, if it's going to deliver that, I don't know, but that's what I'm looking for. Just that kind of experience. And if it makes me kind of, you know, have a teaspoon or a tablespoon of cement or two to get over the RPG aspects and how in depth it's going to be, and kind of, you know, just suck it up. And I'm okay with that. If this game is the one that makes me get over it, you know, and that'll be the sign of a successful game to me. If it makes me, of all people, want to put up with all that shit. So yeah, just from that kind of personal experience aspect of this game, that's what I'm looking for. As far as content, who the hell knows, man? Like, if I have no idea what this game's going to throw at me. Like, if it's anything like Blade Runner and Dread and all that kind of cyberpunk, like Snatcher, like that old game from, you know, Hideo Kojima back on the Sega CD days, anything like that, that's kind of what I'm anticipating that this will be. And if so, bring it on. You know, I want it now. Like, I'm hoping I can get through some of my backlog before this comes out, because hot damn, I don't want any distractions. You know, I don't want that whole feeling of like, I've got all these games, you know, annoying me. Yeah, done.
No, that'll play into a conversation on I think on this week's podcast, which you'll have already seen by the time this goes out, but around the whole shopping list thing and how Cyberpunk probably fits into shopping lists for the end of the year and how big the experience will be. Just to touch on your issues with the RPG elements and kind of reassure you, I think, you know, when those things are in games that are this size and scale, I think about it like Assassin's Creed way. You know, we've discussed at length on previous podcasts how their whole the RPG elements took a little bit over the top, and, you know, loot rarities and everything and stats and all the rest of it. But you could easily play through that game not focusing on your gear at all, just, you know, keeping common gear attached to your character. You'd get through it playing it on the easiest difficulty. And I think Cyberpunk will maybe do something a little bit different, a little bit similar, where it's like, yeah, you can play it on easy if you just want to experience a story. You don't have to worry about your disciplines or your stats, or, you know, you can just play through the game and you're not really going to feel too much of a RPG min-max challenge. So I think you'll be all right with that. So Dan, what do you want from Cyberpunk?
This might sound a bit controversial, but I promise it's more of a compliment. But I kind of want to see why CD Projekt Red are one of the best developers at the moment. So, like, I think it's all assumed that, like, Witcher 3 is quite possibly one of the best RPGs ever. But like Witcher 1, Witcher 2, I think they're cult classics and they're loved, but like they're not, like, no one goes back and really refers to those games. It's always The Witcher 3. And it would kind of be like seeing what's the movie, Sixth Sense. It's like seeing Sixth Sense and be like, this is the greatest director. And then you realize that he followed up with Signs and Unbreakable, and then slowly his movies got worse. So, like, I would kind of want them to come out and be like, no, this is why we're here. It's not just we lucked out with The Witcher and everything fell into place and it was the right time. I kind of want to see them just, like, blow me off, because, well, that sounds bad. But I was gonna, because when I played Witcher, I was like, I really appreciate this game. I really respect this game, but I can't get into it. I did get overstuffed with everything in that world and everything, and it was huge. I really want this game to organically put me into the world to want to do a lot of the side quests, not just throw side quests at me and expect me to do it. So I hope they've found a way, especially in this setting, to be able to do that in a natural way. And those are probably my two biggest things. I'm really excited about the customization stuff, and how in depth they're going with it. And if you're going to do it in any game, a Cyberpunk game where you're swapping out limbs and shit like that, that's exciting. But yeah, those first two are the things that I want out of this game.
From previous conversations, I think, do I recall that you were a bit annoyed that it wasn't going to be third person, so that you couldn't actually see all of this customization? Was that something that you'd questioned?
It was, but I think even when you look at that trailer you had up before, there's a lot of it actually also showing your character in it. I think they said with the cutscenes they're trying to keep as much of it first person as possible. I just hope I don't know. I need it. A balance is good. I understand why you can keep it in first person the whole time, because they're giving you control the entire time. But I do want to see this awesome character that I'm creating. Like, what's the point of spending all this experience and money, or however it works in the game? What's the point of spending it all on something that you don't see?
It's a fair point. I think so. For me, what I want from Cyberpunk, I want The Witcher set in a cyberpunk world. I mean, first person perspective I'm fine with. As you can see kind of the footage on the screen now, I think this type of experience, you need to be enamored in the conversations that are happening with the NPCs. The Witcher kind of did that, where it pulled you into kind of a perspective where it was kind of not a point of view, but kind of a side, a kind of side held point of view, where it'd be back and forth with whoever you were talking to. You'd have your dialogue options, a la Mass Effect. And that worked really well. CD Projekt can tell a story. That's something that I don't doubt them in at all. But I want them to be able to transition that to a cyberpunk world, to a first person game, and I want them to nail the combat. That is so important in a game like this. Like the sword play in The Witcher, I know you two didn't really care for it too much, but I really enjoyed the sword play in The Witcher. When you start to get into that, and it's often referred to as like sword fight in The Witcher feels like a dance, and it does. It's like it is a factoring in your dodges, then knowing when to attack, and it invoked kind of a mastery, but a sense of that it wasn't too difficult. With guns and first person sword play, it's never really been done great. Like, I can't think of a first person kind of melee game where the swords feel like they connect. Do you know what I mean? So in this game, like, we've seen some of the footage of the katanas and some of the people that have gone hands-on. If you look at the industry, kind of, people are going, the katanas didn't feel great. Like, they felt a bit swooshy, but the guns felt all right. Now, gunplay, you'd think first person gunplay should be easy to nail and develop, because how many first person shooter games have existed? How many people that are working on this game maybe have previously worked on a first person shooter? They've nailed down the gunplay, but the sword play, for me, I really want them to make it feel good. And CD Projekt, to their credit, they did say, look, that's a factor of the gameplay that had been shown, and people that had kind of played that build and made these comments. That was a low level stat, so you had low level kind of sword stats. Your experience bar is going to go up in different areas. You'll earn progression towards being better with a sword or being better with a gun. And as that happens, you get more competent. And so when you max out your sword stats, you are a samurai, and you're knocking bullets away with your katana and things like that, which that's kind of what I want to do, and I want it to be good, and I want it to feel good. We constantly bang on, any type of game we're talking about, that the 30-second gameplay loop has to be good. That is the mark of a good video game. So if the 30-second loop in Cyberpunk, depending on how you want to play it, do you want to play it guns blazing? Do you want to play it as kind of a hacker? Do you want to play it as kind of a melee combat person? Like, whichever of those styles you choose to play this game, I want all three of them to feel consistently good and fun to play, to the fact that, all right, I just assassinated someone, now I want to go assassinate someone else. It's that kind of gameplay loop of you want to keep experiencing that 30 seconds. If they can nail that, along with a good CD Projekt story in a world that's already this enticing, like I'm sold. I'm sold already, but I think it does have to still do some stuff to be successful. And Dan, I'm quite wary of what you were talking about, and this is probably what we think can happen kind of area of the conversation, but nothing indicates that this is going to be a home run. They haven't done a first person game before. You know, this is not their bread and butter. They had practice with Witcher. They had The Witcher, which, as you said, cult classic. Witcher 2, market improvement, very good and very competent game. But The Witcher 3 was the magnum opus. So this is something new and something different for them. And I don't think anything indicates that it's going to be the masterpiece that we think it probably is. And I hope it is. So, yeah, if they can hit those beats for me, I'll be happy. And yeah, world size, make it as big as you possibly can. Make it take me a year to finish it.
Well, I really like. I also really like respect, and we go. Well, at least I do go on about this all the time in our podcasts, and I always bring up Horizon as the example because that's the one that always pops to my head first. But yeah, the fact that they are going from this third-person sword-based combat to open-world first-person shooter RPG, like they're spending the capital they earn from Witcher on something that they really wanted to do, rather than just going, okay, let's just make Witcher 4, which is what probably excites me the most about it. And yeah, I'm really curious about the story because, as I think I've said this before to you guys, it really is a struggle for me to stay in cyberpunk worlds for a very long time. Like if you're talking your Blade Runners or your Ghost in the Shells, like any of those type of properties, I struggle to stay in there for a long period of time. And if this is going to be a game that is as massive as it is, I'm wary of it, but I hope they can pull it off.
I see the critical path sitting somewhere around the 40-50 hour mark. But I don't see it being a we were speaking about Mass Effect Andromeda earlier. Like Mass Effect Andromeda, I think I finished in like 23 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a huge world should you want to go off and explore it, but the critical path is quite short. So if you're talking about having an experience like that, like even with The Witcher, like I think with Witcher 3's critical path, you're looking at 50 hours. Like, and with some side stuff and going off and exploring, you can easily sink hundreds and hundreds of hours into The Witcher, and I think the intent will be the same with Cyberpunk. So would that change your mind on kind of wanting to play it? If it does become that you've got to commit 50 hours?
That makes me a little nervous, only because like coming off Ghost of Tsushima, right? So I actually platinumed that game, which I never do, and that took me about 50 hours, all up, do everything pretty much. If the critical path and the story is anywhere close to the same amount of time, that overwhelms me. That makes me feel like someone just put a heavy bag on my shoulders, and I'm like, oh my god, I got to carry this shit. It's And you know what? And if we want to go into stuff we think is going to happen, I think it is going to be that. I think it will be this massive game, and I don't think it's a lock for like game of the year that many people predict. But I think its main competition that people are going to argue with is games like The Last of Us, which is so divisive on people. I think everyone will very much appreciate Ghosts or whatever, but it's not going to be that conversation. I still do think it will be between those two games. I don't think Avengers or anything else. I think you'll have a couple of votes for like Final Fantasy coming up the rear, but it is going to be between those games. And I want to like it more than The Last of Us Part 2, plain and simple. After finishing Last of Us Part 2, I wanted to play this game more because I'm like, I just got to play these games because they're the end of a generation. They're everything you can possibly do with the consoles that are currently out. I just want to play those games.
That is a concern. You bring up some good points about time. Like how much time do we have when this game comes out amongst some other big contenders, big time sinks? Man, you're right about feeling the weight of it. Like I'm even starting to just looking down the barrel of like when we do this weekend's podcast about games that we on our list and all that kind of stuff. Just thinking about it, like God, you got to commit to some shit here, and I'm full on like just trying to get through my backlog, like, and I swear, I have to clear out some of the big ones before this comes out because I don't want to have this game come out and then get distracted by some other new game and then never go back to it because that's happened a lot this generation where I've tried to play everything that I've wanted to play and I've not allowed myself time, or you'll just buy a lot of games on sale all at once and you never get to them. So I ruined that experience with Final Fantasy 15 when that came out, and I did the same thing with Assassin's Creed Origins when that came out. I don't want it to happen with this one. There's something about this one that I just want to be taken by and not taken off. So like another discussion we'll have later, but I've already wiped one game off from this time period, which is Avengers. Like that's immediately like I'm just like, nah, I don't want to support that based on what we've found out. But and then you've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So I'm coming up to another point of like, crap, because they're both within 2 days of each other. And they're two games that I've wanted to play all like, the last few years, or at least the last year at least, of like, God, yeah, these are going to be some big
not to mention
events.
Halo.
Oh, yeah, and that too. So yeah, like real first world problems, amongst whatever's going on. But it's like far out. What do you do? What do you prioritize?
It's a balancing act. And again, like I'm cautious of not stealing the conversation from the main show around kind of the shopping list thing. But it is all a balance, and that was my issue with Cyberpunk and Watch Dogs. I think they are comparable in ways. Cyberpunk is obviously set in a cyberpunk world, whereas Watch Dogs is much more of a nearer sighted future, if you get what I mean. It's kind of a dystopian take on London. So dystopia, cyberpunk, very very similar genres. The whole hacking kind of ethos behind it and kind of the stylizations are quite similar too, but that game comes out 2 weeks before, 2.5 weeks before this. And it's like, how can I want to commit to that when I know I'm going to have this experience, which I assume is going to be markedly better a few weeks down the line? And yeah, the Assassin's Creed thing, we'll talk about that on the main show, because I've got some definite thoughts around Valhalla and how that's going to play into my end of the year. But Cyberpunk, I genuinely see. And I think, John, I get what you're saying. You're like, you want to be captured by it because I think it's the world building that they've already done. We haven't played this game, but I already have a sense of what that world feels like to be in.
Yeah.
So when I actually get to be in it, I think I'm just looking to be impressed. And where are we playing this? Just as a kind of, it's coming everywhere. So Dan, your PlayStation 5, I'm assuming. Chunt, Series X.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think maybe the same.
Hey.
I was leaning on playing it on PC, and dependent on what we find out nearer to launch with the support for ray tracing, which again is something that we know to be coming about this game. Obviously, it should have been part of the conversation at the start. But the PC version will have enhanced ray tracing and some features that are not accessible to console, just literally because they can't do it. Although these new machines do have the ability to use certain properties of ray tracing, they're not a GeForce RTX card. They're not. They don't have that capability inside of them. So until we see what the difference is there, I think I'll hold my breath on kind of where to play until we know more about that. But the smart delivery thing is great, and we've kind of touched on that earlier as well. Dan, is there any word on how PlayStation are handling that?
It's going to be a free upgrade. I don't know if it's going to be a free upgrade at launch. So the problem is with they said that there would be a free upgrade at a later date, but that was before they moved it for November. And because we don't know the launch dates of any of these consoles yet, I don't think they've really said too much since they've moved the date, because they can't give away when these consoles are coming.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. All right, well, moving kind of in the transition to the final point of the conversation then to what we think is going to happen with the game. We've touched on a few points there already of what we think it's going to be in terms of, Dan, you mentioned the size and scale. So is there anything else you kind of want to add to kind of your thoughts of where this goes and what it does?
I think the story is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, because I think in a game like this, there's going to be a lot of commentary on a lot of stuff, and people are going to take a lot of it the wrong way, and you're going to get a lot of shit about it. But at least they're trying, and hopefully they do it respectfully. I think I'm curious about the dialogue in that, just by the stuff that we've seen, and if they can at least put some nuance into it a little bit, because right now every character you meet is the extreme example of what that character is. And I think they're going to get a lot of flack throughout the story is my prediction, I guess. But there's going to be a lot of commentary within this game.
Oh man, I didn't even consider that. The Twitter sphere. Oh, far out. Oh my god. Gonna be an absolute dumpster fire. I can see myself muting a lot of words already. But yeah, just turn it off while you play the game. Look, I think they'll have a bit of nuance, like what you touched on. I think this world will try and explain the difference between those who've embraced the cybernetic enhancements and those who are traditionalists. It is that kind of world where people have the choice to do whatever they want. Very open-ended in that regard. And that'll be interesting, considering how, today's world is struggling with a lot of that kind of stuff. It's definitely, this Cyberpunk as a concept, it's been around for like ages. This isn't anything new. Like, this is based off a property, like off a, pencil paper type game. So this ideology has been around for so long that, like, even the creators come out saying, like, it's about time something like this has been made. Like, I made this thing so long ago, and now these subject matter is current, turning into current. And so it's a bit of a timely game, and I'm curious to see how they explore some of that subject matter. But that's not why I want to play it. That'll be an interesting part. But what I think will happen is you'll find subsects of fans and people that play this that'll identify with it and certain things. Like, I used to know some people back in Rockhampton that man, they were all about this kind of cyberpunk, steampunk life, and that was, that they were a bit different, and I didn't, I knew them in high school, and like when you leave high school, then everybody finds their way, and you're like, holy shit, you went a totally different direction I expected. And I'm expecting to see some of that in there, or at least some memories flashing back. So yeah, look, it'd be interesting. And if some people find something out of it, I guarantee you the cosplay community is going to go nuts with this game, like it already is. And I think it's going to be a positive experience. I don't think the people that will have something wrong with this game and what they experience in this game are those who just are very closed-minded already, and like, everybody has their preference, everybody has their ideologies and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine, like whatever you want to do. But as a game, as a medium, like, these things are meant to grow your mind and expand your horizons, and I think people will be able to learn a bit from this. Yes, it's the very extreme, as you say, but I think that's of the type of game and world that it is, like, and it's so far ahead. Yeah, it's so far in the extreme, and that's what it is, and that's what it's meant to be. But it's still going to reflect on our own societal norms. And yeah, the story itself, I hope it plays into some of that, and like Blade Runner did. Like, that movie was ahead of its time. and in a lot of ways. So I hope we get some of that reflected in this game. Otherwise, it'll just be a shooty bang bang RPG, and that's fine. But yeah, look, as long as I can get a massive swing and cock out of it in this game, that'd be fantastic.
Fair dues. I think there are a few things that are gonna rub people the wrong way. You guys are obviously focused on the social commentary behind it. I think one of the things that is going to rub people the wrong way is the brain dance. I want to say they're calling it.
The Batman's Predator mode, you mean?
Oh,
yeah. I see that becoming the Batmobile tank missions of Cyberpunk, and the fact that they immediately, when they showed that, lent into, look, the main story missions and story beats will need these brain dances to uncover parts of the story. I got very worried, and that to me is not interesting. Yes, use it. I'll happily do it a couple of times throughout the story and go, all right, yeah, I haven't done this for like 3-4 hours. Let's do one now. If it's shoehorned in at every given opportunity, it's going to get boring and old very quickly. On the other side of that, I see that people will speak about this game in terms of emergent gameplay the way people did Metal Gear Solid 5. When that game was being played and missions and areas were being cleared in all of these different ways that, some people don't even think about or see the opportunity to do. I think we'll be talking about Cyberpunk as the evolution for that. I think it will set the gold standard for emergent gameplay. We spoke earlier about, different ways to tackle missions mean that you'll get different outcomes, which means your story will move down different paths. I see that being a real big focus and probably one of the highlights in terms of the storytelling. But that's just kind of my either side of the coin. I see something bad happening, I see something good happening. I also agree with your sentiment that you touched on earlier, Dan, in terms of it might well end up that this is not the game of the year contender that everybody thinks it's going to be. I think it'll quickly find its audience, and I don't think its audience will be as big as the industry is expecting. Like, I don't think that this is, if you compare it to Rockstar, so you've got Red Dead and GTA played by everybody. Like, literally, I bet all three of us at some point have booted GTA 5 at least. Yeah.
Finished it twice.
Exactly. So, and then Red Dead, still critically acclaimed game, still huge title, but nowhere near the scale of GTA. So I see this sitting somewhere on the Red Dead side, where Witcher did achieve quite a huge install base. It sold a bunch of copies, and even more so, thanks to the TV series. Like, it got a huge bump from that and got kind of mainstream notice. I see this sitting on the opposite side, and whilst it will get its audience, I don't see it being anywhere near the side. I think a lot of people will go in going, this is going to be awesome, and then hate it, either for the social issues that you brought up. The gameplay style might not be for everybody. The difficulty spike, which I see it having quite a big one. The Witcher had quite a big difficulty curve. If you were playing on fairly difficult difficulties, if that makes any sense. But yeah, those are kind of the few things that I really see happening. And I also see it probably not selling as well as we were anticipating. We discussed a few weeks ago the whole, what will be the best selling game of November, and your brain instantly goes, it has to be Cyberpunk because everybody wants to play this game. But I think as the word of mouth gets out of the style of game and the moment to moment gameplay, it'll turn a lot of people off. Whether they already buy it and then get turned off and then complain about it, like, who knows? But I think, Dan, you may be right. It maybe isn't going to be the huge instant boon that we thought it was going to be. I see it having a long tail, a very long one. The Witcher, as we said, the show sold millions of copies of that game. Like, last year? And it came out in 2015, I want to say, 14, 15. And it was still selling like hotcakes, last Christmas, because the TV show came out, gave it a huge bump. Obviously, there's properties being developed as spin-offs to Cyberpunk as well. The anime series that's being produced by Netflix. So, so CD Projekt are all in on this. And look, I'm not as confident as I was. I'll put it that way. Like a month or two ago, I was like, this is going to be the best thing that I've ever played. Now, after what we've seen, what we've heard, what we've learned, not so sure.
Too bad it turns out to be shit.
Yeah, I don't think
that would really suck.
I don't think in any scenario is it going to wind up being shit. I think it'll
be good at least.
It'll be good. It'll be good.
Game at least.
Like, there's no way it's not a good game, even from what we've seen already. Like, unless they really, really mess some stuff up. But there's a fine line between good and great. As industry veteran Jim Sterling constantly says, come find out if your video game is great or perfect. And because you're not allowed to have a good video game or a bad video game, it's great or perfect. They're the only two scores and results that are given in this industry. Nobody can be critical of anything.
That's true.
And hopefully by proxy, it is at least good. I mean, I hope you can romance her.
Can I ask you guys what gender or sex you're going to play as in this game?
Whichever one can have intimate relations with that character that's on screen right now.
Yes. Yeah, that's an attractive set of polygons, I'll say that. Yeah, I'll be playing as a male man.
Lots of triangles. Sure.
Yes.
What about you, Dan? What are you going to play as?
Female. I flipped a switch in, like, I think it was 3 years ago, where I just started actively playing as females in any game that I had the choice. Just because I played as guys for so many years in those games, where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to just try something different, because there's not much more that the guy side is ever really going to show me. So I'm like, play as a kick-ass female.
Yeah, I think that perspective works, and I still am in two minds. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure what to take. Like, I'm playing Assassin's Creed as Cassandra in Odyssey at the minute, and I can't imagine that game being a male character. Like, the story and everything works so well as being a female, but by the same token, I'm just walking around like banging every woman that I possibly can. Every time I get a romance option, it's just like, yeah, let's have some crazy Greek orgies. Like,
you're in Greece. It's not like they were opposed to it.
Exactly, that's what I mean. So they're loving it. So yeah, I've done the same thing, not to the extent I think you have, Dan, with a lot of these open world games. I've taken the female option for the last few that I've played. Assassin's Creed being the most recent. I think a game like this, though, where it is, rather than being thrust into somebody's story, you're creating the story for you. It makes more sense to me to play a male character. Whereas if it's a predetermined RPG where the story kind of just evolves based on your choices, etc., like Assassin's Creed, yes, having that option and choosing the female character makes sense. But this, I think it is a supposed, like, throw yourself in, create your own story in this world and be that version of you, which, Chunt, I think is your approach, isn't it? Where it's like, I want to be me in this world. So that's where I'm leaning with Cyberpunk, but I haven't quite made my mind up yet.
You actually brought up a good point. I was meant to bring it up earlier, where the fact of, like, once again, it's a respect thing. So, like, I respect them changing from third person to first person, but also when creating The Witcher, you are playing that game as Geralt.
As Geralt, yeah.
And this is them once again trying something different with the story and being like, no, we're creating a story for you, and it's up to you what you want to do, rather than play as Geralt, which is,
as I said, about the whole emergent gameplay thing. And I think I think that is kind of a big focus. It's maybe going a little bit unnoticed with a lot of the conversation around Cyberpunk. But yeah, the more I do think about it, the more swayed I am to have that experience as a version of me in this world.
Yeah, I figure, like, man, if you're going to spend 50 hours in a game where you get a choice, why not be the most awesome version of yourself within that world that you can be, But if you want to experience it through different eyes, then that's obviously a totally different experience that the game will offer you, and it's up to you how you take it. But it's different to playing games like Tomb Raider, for argument's sake. It's just the first female protagonist that came to mind, where it's like you're playing the story of this character, Like, you're not given the choice, obviously, but that's the experience that you're signing up for, and that's fine. If you want a male Tomb Raider, you've got Nathan Drake. Go for gold.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of game, basically. Whereas this, like Oblivion and Skyrim and all that Fallout and that kind of stuff, it's built and tailored for, your experience, like your experience. So that is defined by your own. But for me, it's always like, role playing, And for me, it's. I see the conversation going around on social media nowadays, where it's like, if you don't at least open yourself up the opportunity of playing as the opposite, that narrows your game field and stuff. And I'm like, fuck off, it does. Like, I'm signing up for my own experience, and I'm out to do it the way I want to do it, and that's totally fine. And I don't see why there's an argument there. Like, everybody should have their own experience. Like Dan, I'm not interested in playing this game as a female at all. Like, I want to have me in this game. But you saying that you want to do it the opposite way that I prefer, it's like, oh, that's interesting to know. Like, and I am interested to see how that turns out. And obviously, if that's how you decide to go, we're going to obviously talk about it when the game's out and stuff. And it's interesting, and I think it just adds more conversation to the game as a whole. But I don't think
I was just going to say, there's no wrong option. I don't know why people argue one way or another. There's no wrong option. But also, I think it's because, like, in some of these games, like, I don't ever see myself being in this world. Like, me as who I am, I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to live in this world. So therefore, I'll just play as somebody else that wants to be there, and I can do stupid shit that I would never do. Whereas in Mass Effect, I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I could live in and go around in spaceships and that. But in Cyberpunk, I'm like, no, I don't know if I'd want to be here. It's a life of debauchery. That's why Jamie feels so attached to it right now. And
home for me, mate. I'd be all about that life. But no, that's probably quite a good kind of place to wrap up on it. Final question for you both. And again, it's kind of Cyberpunk related, but more to do with CD Projekt as a studio. Do you think that there is another Witcher game in development? Do you think they simultaneously hold both properties and develop Cyberpunk and Witcher?
God, do they have the manpower?
There's kind of two questions to that. One, yes, I think I think they've actually said they're going to make Witcher 4, and it's actually beyond the books, and they had to go to the original writer of the books to get some more permission to go beyond what he's written, and therefore they're going to give him more royalties to do that. So yes, I think it will be, but I don't think they're made up of two teams or anything. I think they'll make Cyberpunk and then they'll go back and work on Witcher 4 after that. So Witcher 4 in 2024 or 2025 or something.
I reckon it depends on how successful this is. Like, this is a property that's not their own as well. So that's 2 for 2. They've got the Witcher series and now this one. I think depending on how this goes, I think they might be more empowered to build something of their own IP. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Like they've made their, earned or cut their whatever fucking analogy you want to use.
Cut their teeth.
Yeah, cut their teeth. Yeah, on those big massive worlds, 2 different sides of the spectrum. So why not make your own? That way, you're not paying royalties, you're not paying another creator, you're not, all these other things, and it's all built in house, and you control your whole entire narrative and stuff. So I think if this is successful, I could see that happening. But if it's not, if it doesn't quite latch in how they expect it to, I think they might have Witcher in the back pocket of like, all right, let's go back here. It's a bit safe for a little bit.
I also think like there's no way they'd go straight into like a Cyberpunk sequel, because you don't work 8 years on a game and then be like, now let's spend another 4 years doing this. Like you want to do something different.
I actually think there's a Witcher game already in development. I think they're developing in tandem. I think they probably have been for the last few years. Last rumors I remember seeing about The Witcher was they were going back there, but it was not going to be a story around Geralt. It was probably going to take Ciri as the lead, which Happy for that.
That could be right. Like as I said, that first announcement trailer came out in 2013. Witcher 3 didn't come out until 2015. So they clearly had the plans to work on it even before Witcher 3 even came out. So
in development is it's a broad statement. You know.
Yep.
Oh, I think at the moment, like all hands are on deck, squashing bugs and getting Cyberpunk ready for launch. But I think obviously as it launches and there's any post-launch content, which they've confirmed is coming, right? There'll be expansions,
and it'll be free.
In the same vein as what The Witcher got, but you have to feel like that's going to be a much smaller team building or finishing those off, whilst everybody else moves on to The Witcher, being it
story teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, if it's a series spin-off, cool, I'm all for that. I quite liked her as a character. I'd play a game that's solely dedicated to her. But likewise, if they do manage to get permissions obviously in place and build another story around Geralt, or even take it back to the pre-Witcher 1, like what was he doing, what was he up to then, like, or remake the first Witcher. I don't see CD Projekt doing that, actually. They don't strike me as a studio that goes, let's remake what we did years and years ago.
Yeah.
So I think they're more, let's do the next thing. But we'll wrap up there. Just a touch under the hour mark. Anybody who's watched, thank you very much, and come back next week for Halo. Chunt, get your notes prepped. And thank you for anybody who's also watched any of these shows to date. I think Dan, you touched on it on last week's main show. The Fable downloading now is by and large our most watched video. So thank you to people who like Fable, and hopefully you'll stick with us through this cycle and into the launch of Cyberpunk and beyond. So we'll see you this weekend, next weekend, soon, in a few days.
Yes.
Keep watching our videos.